And go.
Okay, so we have the 4 ways the subconscious develops. So Nicole just proved one very clearly. Okay, so at conception. What's next?
Pregnancy.
At pregnancy. What happens at pregnancy?
Love, right?
What about love? Where's my chart?
You learn how to conditional.
Okay, so it's conditional love. Where's my diagram?
Right there.
Ready?
Oh, no.
This one. Okay. So I'm going to explain this in a minute, but here you have the subconscious, and then we'll go into death. But this is important because this is related to death. So at pregnancy, you get a conditional version of love. What does that mean? A conditional version of love.
Certain terms,
Okay, yes.
how you're supposed to feel, you're being like told how to act.
Or you're learning.
No, you're
Yeah.
on it. Good.
Yeah. Certain way, like you're supposed to feel like this, if you don't, it's wrong. Sort of.
Okay, and your parents are giving you these conditions
Mhm.
based on how they're able to love you. Your parents cannot give you unconditional love. Why? Because they come from the flesh. Anything that comes from the flesh is flawed. Okay? And this is going to relate right back to death in all of our figures down here in a minute. Just, this is the method to, I have no method to my madness, but somehow it all ties together. Okay? So in pregnancy, everything that mom is feeling, everything that your mother goes through, if she's forced to move out of her house, if she's getting a divorce, if she falls and trips, affects the baby. And that baby says, oh, if I fall and trip and hurt myself, this must be love. Oh, if I'm anxious, this must be love. So they're getting exactly that definition of conditional love. What's third?
Birth.
Birth. The actual birthing process. What happens during the birthing process?
The movement, how you're gonna go through that.
Okay, how you're going to move into the next stage of life. So right now, and this is super important, what happens when you're in your next stage of life? Okay, give me a second. What happens when you're in your next stage of life? Who's starting anything new right now? Like, I'm starting a new cycle in my life. I just recently got divorced. That's a new stage. What are you starting?
School.
Okay, you're starting school, you're starting this new relationship with your father. James?
Same.
Okay, so when you're starting a new stage in your life, it is going to mimic the birthing process. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to try to change from your birthing process, and I'll give you my example. My mother did not have time to have anesthesia. So my tendency was to speed through things. The doctor said to my mother, hold it. My mother said, hold it, you're an ass. And boom, out I came so fast that I almost flew onto the floor and they had to catch me. So every time something new happened in my life, a new stage came into my life, I would come really, really fast. So one of the things we have to learn, and this is super, super important, and this would be good for your mom, is how to die. How to die. Write this down. We need to learn how to die. And how do we learn how to die? By looking about how we were birthed. That is super, super important. So I have learned, unfortunately, that all the ways that I have led my life into new cycles, which were rushed, impulsive, rash, hurried, is not the way to die. So I know that my death, so to speak, has to be slow and lengthy and paused. But there's more than one death in our life. It's not just that final death when we're buried or cremated. We're going to learn that. So we must learn how to die. And this is extremely, extremely important. Our birthing process links directly into the next stage of life and teaches us how to die. And then the fourth is the story from 0 to 7. From 0 to 7, we get an actual story with our characters, our parents, our friends, our school, our cousins, our uncles, our neighbors. And this tells us our problems in our life, so to speak. Okay, so from 0 to 7, we are now alive, we are now aware, and we can say, oh, my brother did this, my mom did this to me, and now we have our narrative. And these 4 levels are how the four stages of the subconscious. But for the death birth process, this is going to be supremely important. And this one is going to be the one we want to rewrite. The one we want to rewrite is going to come every 7 years and is going to be equal to a death. And is going to be related to all these symbols here. So we're just going to go next door. We're going to watch our TED Talk, and then we'll be back and we'll pick this up. Okay? I'm sorry?
The number 7 actually almost died.
Okay. And many people may have an experience like that.
And I'm 14 too.
Well, and that's the thing. It will repeat every 7 years. So it's something that she has to watch, and we can see it in your chart.
Yeah.
This is what we can find in our chart with the Saturn. So when we're looking at our astrology chart, the placement of Saturn is supremely important because it's going to tell us
Which one is Saturn?
the one that looks like the H. So when you guys get your chart, you'll see wherever you have it, that's going to be a place where you're going to have a death, so to speak, every so often. I call this the skinny cows. And I'll give you my little story of the skinny cows. So let's go next door. Let me just pause this and then we'll be back. Let me contact Ms. Rapace.